Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 73 of ZK Live. Tonight, we're going to be talking about wallpaper and all things wallpaper with the expert himself, David Cook. They install wallpaper and a lot of it. David is going to be teaching a class at ZK Finishing School coming up at the end of April. And I don't install wallpaper, so I have all sorts of questions. I'm excited. I'm going to learn a lot during this episode. David's going to be coming on in just a second. David owns a company called D'Franco Wallpaper and Painting. I believe he's in Illinois, but we're gonna ask him all about wallpaper installation. We're just having a little bit of. There he is. D'Franco is in the house. I'm going to send you an invite now. See if that works. Send request. And boom! Look at this.
Success!
We did it. All right, that's the end of the interview, everybody. See you later. All right. Welcome to ZK Live.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. I've never done a podcast off of Instagram before.
I do it this way because it requires the minimal amount of effort in production, post-production.
Okay.
Interview, I click share, and then I'm done.
Well, that's easy.
Yes. So we do not edit this podcast. When it goes out in podcast form, it is not as well edited as a normal podcast, but
I don't edit mine either.
It's one of those things where I could, if the second you say it has to be perfect, I'm not going to do it. Too many things on the plate. So welcome, Dave. Tell everybody where you are and what do you do?
Yep, my name is David Cook, and we are in Elgin, Illinois, which is about 30-something miles northwest of Chicago. So we have a painting and wallpaper business. We've got 4 full-time wallpaper installers now. So residential and commercial wallpaper, as well as removing it, and then cabinet refinishing and traditional painting.
Wonderful. I've been to Elgin, Illinois before.
That was at PDCA last year, the year before last.
Yeah, it was the last craftsmanship forum we were allowed to have.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
We had some kind of family event that happened that weekend. I think it was my son's wedding. So I was so looking forward to it. And then he announced, hey, we're just going to get married this weekend. I'm like, fine. Well, I guess got to do the wedding. But
So
cool.
you have 4 wallpaper installers. How many painters do you have?
We've got 15 total employees, including staff. So we've got 4 installers, and then we have 5 painters, and right now 2 cabinet guys working on our 3rd.
Wow. How long have you been in business?
I started 2005 is when I started, so just kind of a solo thing, and it was solo pretty much for a while, and then I partnered with a guy, and that worked pretty great until 07, 08. And then once the economy kind of tanked, then his deal was, I'm done. And so he moved to Arizona and left me the business. Didn't leave it in a bad way, but left it as far as I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
So once he left, then it was kind of trying to refigure out what we were doing, because we did a lot of decorative finishes, and that went out the window. And the regular painting we had was all like residential repaints, and we had a couple retirement communities that we were in pretty consistently. And once the economy kind of tanked, they all decided to supplement their income with their lost retirement by doing painting. So that went away. So then it was just been a gradual, rebuilding of how we find new customers. And that's when we came across Marcus Sheridan and learned how to do blogging. So they ask you answer theory. And
Yes.
it took about 2 months, and it started to uptick. And so I was doing it once a month, and then it turned to like 1.5 times a month. And then I figured out I'm getting a lot of leads from Google. So then I'm doing this every week. So it was about five months, and it became our number 1 source of revenue by far. So thank you, Marcus Sheridan, because it works.
That's a tremendous book. I actually saw him speak at a conference about a year ago. It was Social Media Marketing Conference. He was the final keynote speaker. And he started talking. I was like, I know that. Like, and then I went, oh my gosh, I read this guy's book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ask, they ask, you answer is a great hook. So then when did wallpaper come into the mix?
Wallpaper actually happened by accident because we were working for an interior designer, and we were doing. They reclaimed a bunch of tin ceiling tiles they got from an old bar in Wisconsin, and they were putting it in a library, kind of about the same size ceiling as in our house. And they were just really beat up, but they still wanted that old rustic, like patina look. So we were kind of redoing those and putting Modern Masters, the metallic paint, and then hitting them with activators and then sealing them as they kind of went along to get that nice patina look. So it kind of looked like that Statue of Liberty, here and there. And then as we're doing that, their wallpaper installer quit. And she's, I need you to install this wallpaper today. I said, I have no idea how to do any wallpaper. She says, well, you have a phone. JC Licht, Benjamin Moore's down the street. Go get what you need. Come back and put it up. I don't care what it looks like. They close in 3 days and this has to be done. And so I went online and did a real basic how this is going to work and tried to find instructions on the paper. Went and got it. I had no clue what I was doing and put it on there. And once I put it up, I'm like, oh, this is awful. There's no way they're going to like this. And she came in. She's like, you said you never did wallpaper. I said, I've never touched wallpaper before. I stripped it. I've never installed it. She's like, well, you're our wallpaper installer now. So there's 3 more rooms. So we have to have them done by Friday. So she launched my Martha Daly. So if you guys know Martha Daly, she's in Houston, Texas. She's probably the most world-class, amazing interior designer I've ever worked with and ever met in my life. She's amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
So you went from like complete amateur installation. I'm sure you look back on that first one and you're like, oh my God. Like, do you do a lot of things different now?
Oh my gosh. Completely redone how I did it. We were doing an estimate for a 2-story foyer because they wanted us to strip it and rehang it. And in the process of doing the estimate, we couldn't get there in time. So we ended up giving her some estimates on touching up cabinets from a cabinet builder. So there was another guy doing wallpaper there, and one thing led to another, and he was retiring as he was doing that job. That was the last job he was doing. So he turned us on to the Wall Covering Installers Association, and it was like end of summer, and they just happened to have a conference coming. It was like 4 weeks later, and so talked to my wife, and we joined. And 3 weeks later, we were at their conference in Louisville, and we were down there for 3 days, and it was complete immersion of knowing nothing from wallpaper to you've got 150 installers down there, and it was kind of funny because it's that, how do you paint a room? How do you ask 10 painters to paint a room, and you get 15 different answers? Yeah, ask a wallpaper installer how to hang wallpaper, and you get about 20 different answers. So it was, okay, what am I taking away from this and who? So it was kind of just, you're almost feeling out the room to figure out, who you're really going to take some good advice from, so that way you go back with the tools you need. And then we ended up I bought all kinds of tools down there because they were there, they were available. And they had their like vendor showcase kind of set up so you can buy stuff there. And everything that we learned at that conference, I got calls for within about 5 days once I got back home. And it just pretty much took off after that. And we really haven't looked back since.
That's tremendous. And now people can come out to ZKFS April 24th and 20th. And exact same thing. They can come out not knowing how to wallpaper, and they can go home with a base knowledge to actually go install wallpaper. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because there isn't any place that you can go anymore, and all the schools have closed. I know you and I have been trading back and forth emails and Google Docs, and we've got a pretty good size giveaway that for they can take home with them. Practical knowledge they're going to get hands on, something they can take with them afterwards. I think we're finishing the toolkit, so I don't remember what we have in there, but just a basic little grip of basic wallpaper hand tools, but they're quality hand tools. It's nothing you're going to find at Home Depot, Menards, or Lowe's. This is stuff that's going to last you the rest of your life.
Yeah. So I guess while we're there, now let's start at the beginning, and then we'll get into what are these hand tools, because they might be out of context.
All right.
Let's start at the beginning. Like, I'm assuming, there are many types of wallpaper, and it's safe to say there's a large increase in demand for wallpaper right now. Have you seen that?
We haven't really seen an increase because we've been pretty consistent in our wallpaper installation. It keeps shifting, kind of like the painting industry. It keeps shifting, what you get requests for. So we were doing a ton of commercial wallpaper and then some residential, and then a lot of commercial wallpaper we got requests to do in homes because it just lasts and wears so much better. But then in the past, since COVID now, the commercial wallpaper that we had we were on contract for a lot of different hotels, commercial buildings, that all went away in a matter of a day. But the residential side now picked up. So we're getting a lot more calls, but they're smaller jobs. So we would be doing wallpaper installations for 1 to 2 weeks job. And so now it's a lot more people asking for wallpaper installation, like for a powder room or accent walls. So we're still getting a lot of calls, but the installs are a lot different, smaller. And then it gets tricky because you get a lot more people have entered the pot per se for making the wallpaper. So it used to be you had a couple of your really big, name brands, and now those name brands are really getting kind of tested by some smaller and up-and-coming businesses, like a lot of sign and graphic companies we work with, that they have all the tools to print, vehicle wraps. So now they're printing wallpaper. So it's kind of interesting on one hand because it's very readily available, but that's also the bad side because it's so readily available. There's no quality control, and it was an issue a couple years ago, and it's even more so. So people are printing wallpaper on, sometimes it is like rice paper, and you go to get it wet and it just crumbles. Or they'll get self-stick, so don't buy from China, by the way. So they're getting self-stick in different types of wallpapers that as soon as you touch the ink, and even we use gloves, and the ink just comes right off. It doesn't even stay. It has no steadfastness to it. So make sure, even we try and give estimates, it's going to be about X amount of dollars to do a room, but we always want that wallpaper information, where they're getting it from, because we already kind of have a couple flagged companies where they're getting it that we know it's going to be bad wallpaper. But there's a lot of really great stuff out there too.
So that's it. That's a key piece to this puzzle, is estimating and what paper are we going to use, right? So when a client calls you, I call you like, hey, David, I want you to come do wallpaper in my living room. What do you say next?
Yep, we have an intake form, and I don't have one here with me, but we have an intake form that we have our staff use, or I use. So we try and get, what kind of room is it going into? Is it new construction? Is it a remodel? Do you have wallpaper that's on the wall now that has to come off? The biggest key is, do you have your wallpaper selected already? Because, I can tell you, $520 is the minimum we're coming out there to install wallpaper for. But, there's also a couple variables in that, because within the wallpaper, we want to know what you're hanging. So if it's, a run-of-the-mill average 20-inch wide wallpaper, I can pretty much figure that out pretty quick, how many strips it's going to be. And most of them within a certain, like York wall coverings. For the most York wall coverings, I know are going to be this type of primer, this type of paste. It's going to take so much time to do it. But then you get in some tricky ones where the paper comes and it's almost looks like this sheet of paper. And so the wallpaper is the black line, and you have to pre-trim every single piece before you put it on the wall. And so you have to have your table set up. You need, we got 6-foot straight edges and clamps and some weights. So when you're trying to say, well, how much is it going to cost? Well, you're thinking it's coming in a roll. You unroll it and glue it. And you show up and you've got 85 pieces that you got to trim all this stuff for. Well, your cost just went through the roof on that. So knowing the paper is our biggest obstacle. And then even when we get the wallpaper, sometimes we don't know. It won't say on the instructions. It won't say on the website that it's a trimmed or non-trimmed. So it's always that kind of caveat, based on what you told us and based on our information, this is what we're going to do. What's what we're going to do. So we're getting, and during COVID, it made it even harder because we weren't doing any on-site estimates. It was all virtual. So now we're actually kind of getting back into going to homes, looking at the paper, and finding out what we need to install it. So it's make it a lot easier to give asterisks, accurate estimates. So that's helped a lot.
But at the end of the day, it's still an estimate, and there's some flex to it.
Absolutely, yeah. And it seems like wallpaper cabinets. I think you experienced that too. There seems to be it seems to really change. If someone wants a room painted, you're painting it. There's not a lot of big deal with that. But we're finding with the wallpaper, what they're ordering might change, and then the availability changes really fast. We just did one was my first mistake in a long time where I went and estimated it, and the little card that it came with gave us the repeat, how wide it was, and how much was on the roll. But when we unrolled the paper, the repeat was different, and the roll wasn't what they said it was. So we thought we had one strip extra, and we started cutting it and getting all our sheets in line, and we were one strip short. They ordered it 2 weeks ago, and the company that they bought it from no longer has it in stock. So now you're scrambling to find out, can we still get that paper? And then you have to find the same dye lot, color lot, and all this other stuff to make sure it's the same one. And we found one, but it was just in the meantime, they're expecting to get the wallpaper done, so it's done by Easter, and now it's not going to happen. So I don't know. I really felt bad because I've never done that before. Usually I order too much. Now was the first time I was off by that. But
that's crazy. So planning is very important with wallpaper.
Yeah, and if you get an older wallpaper installer, I've only done this a couple of years, so I'm pretty good at it, but I'm no means an expert compared to some guys in the wallpaper associations and some guys that have been around. But the engineering of it. So usually if we go out in person, I've got graph paper. So every wall we measure out. So height, width. I pay no attention to windows. I pay no attention to any obstacles. If it's in the room, I'm figuring it's there. Commercial wallpaper, you can play around with a little bit on that, but for the most part, you're just planning to paper everything and you cut around it. So that's, engineering it out. Every room is 10 by 8. This one's 5 by 8, 10 by 8, 5 by 8. So now I have my basics, and then you go through, and once you have your layout, now you're trying to figure out, okay, how wide's the wallpaper? So if it's 21 inches, I'm dividing 21 inches by the width of the wall, and that'll give you how many strips you have to have. But then you have to take it. Now so for the whole room, say if it's 20 strips that you need, and you have to look at the paper now, what's the repeat? So if it's an 8-foot wall, but it's a 2-foot repeat, you need 10-foot strips all the way around. So you just went from like an average wallpaper can be 21 feet, 24 feet, 30 feet. And then if it's commercial, you can buy it by the yard. So it kind of gets interesting. So all that stuff plays into how much paper you have to order. Great example, we just did one for a stairwell, and we just estimating and said, well, I think it's just going to be a couple rolls. I'm like, no, it's going to be actually a lot of rolls, because as you're doing a stairwell, we did a video on it a couple of weeks ago. Well, the stairwell, you got the angle this way, angles this way, and you have to account, for the square on the top and the bottom. So what is maybe only 8 foot of wall horizontally turns into 12 feet of wall, because you have to account for where the ceiling is, plus the rise of the ceiling and the rise or the pitch of the stairwell. So you're turning, sometimes there was 4 strips out of a 30-foot roll. We got one piece of wallpaper because it has a 4-foot repeat. So now your materials, they go through the roof. So you really have to educate the people. So I know with the YouTubes and the blogging, we try and do our best to really educate people so they're not surprised, because there's still a shock factor when you figure out how much wallpaper people need. And then there's some websites that do a pretty good job of saying, how much wallpaper for a room. But you have to look at, are they accounting for how big your roll is, how big your repeat is, how wide it is? Some of them just ballpark it, but it doesn't really work. The only way to do it is go there, measure the room, engineer it on graph paper, measure it out, and actually pretend you're actually hanging on that little graph paper to make sure you have enough.
I like that. And so, and I like that. I think as a teacher for this class, I think it's valuable that you're not so far down the rabbit hole. Like, it's not done this, like you said, your entire career, and you're doing the ultra high end $30,000 a room wallpapers, where yeah, it can't be taught in a weekend, right?
No.
I think that's why I'm so excited to have you be the teacher, because you're going to teach people how to actually apply wallpaper in a weekend without going so far into the weeds about crazy little details where you'd need 2 weeks to teach anybody even decently. Because we're not, the whole point of this is if you're looking to hang $30,000 wallpaper, ZK class is not for you.
Me, because I'm not going to be able to tell you either.
Yeah, that's not what we're looking at. But I like the idea of we are taking and getting people up to a base level so they can install wallpaper, but not the crazy high-end stuff. So you talked about engineering the room. That's the graph paper and like mapping out what you're going to do and how.
Yep.
Does it go any farther than that as far as
that's pretty much the basic of it. I mean, that's how I've learned to do it, and that's been the most effective for me. You know, you try and add a couple hours into when you're doing the bid for that time, because it does take time. You're going there and adding it all up to make sure what's going to go where. So you have to account for that time. You can't just give it to them.
Start putting stuff up, you better have had a plan.
You have to, yeah. Plan to fail, you'll fail to plan.
I love it. So, and I to the point of not having a hard price, I think a lot of painters understand that. Like I know, we've removed a lot of wallpaper. We don't remove wallpaper at a hard number, right? Because it's, who knows? Sometimes you take it off in full sheets, and you're like, oh my God, that was so easy. And then we've all remember the times where we've taken wallpaper off like dime, quarter-size pieces at a time, and you're there for days. So I think it's easy for painters to wrap their heads around. Okay, this is not a set price because there's a lot of unknowns. Just like I can't give you a hard price to remove wallpaper because there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So I guess the first step, then, we've engineered the room and we've ordered our paper based off of those things, and I guess you have to trust the wallpaper company. You know, how often are you going to find out they lied to you and said that it's wrong?
Believe it or not, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, you can probably figure 30% of the time you will have a problem with the wallpaper order. So when we're giving people we give them their estimate. So if this is how much it's going to cost to install the wallpaper, this is how much it's going to cost to prep the wall, and then we give them another line item. This is based on you are ordering this pattern, this lot number, in series, and X amount of, and then you have to figure out the right amount of rolls, because it gets goofy because you got metric rolls, and then you got US rolls, single rolls sold as double, by yards. There's probably about 5 different ways that I know of that you can buy the wallpaper. And so you have to pay attention to what that label says is how it's ordered, because you can get into trouble really quick. It was like probably the 4th job I did. I told them we needed 5 rolls. They sent the 5 rolls, and the rolls were metric, and it was 6 meters of paper. So that company actually sold a single roll of wallpaper, 6 meters. They're probably the only company I've ever met that sold an actual single roll, because that's the other part that gets confusing, because almost every residential wallpaper is sold in a double roll. And you go on the website and they'll say, how many single rolls do you need? Well, you're not getting a single roll, because right after it, it'll say, tiny, tiny print, everything's sold in double rolls. So we tell them exactly how they need to order. And we do that on purpose, because if around here we use J.C. Licht, Benjamin Moore stores, because they have a lot of really good designers, and they have a really good return policy for wallpaper. So I'll add 15% no matter what. That way, if there's an issue or a defect. But if you don't need it, they'll take it back. Or most companies, once you order it, they're not taking it back. So having that estimate to take to the designer to tell them exactly what you're ordering makes your life just a lot easier, because then there's no guesswork.
So there's a lot of covering your butt, making sure, this is not, I'm going to go grab an extra gallon like I had to do today on a job. You don't just go grab an extra gallon.
Yeah.
So there's different types. Tell me about the wall prep. Like, what do I have to do to get ready to paint to do wallpaper on a room?
Similar to repainting, you're going to want to make sure what's on the wall. If there's peeling paint or if there's wall damage, it's going to have to be really taken care of. Overall, you're looking for level 4 finish would be your minimum. Level 5 depends on the wall. We're doing a lot of commercial graphics right now, where it is, I don't have one with me. I'd show you. It is slick. So almost like your iPad screen, it's that smooth and it's that shiny. So when you're putting that on a wall, and if anyone here is a paint, well, I'm assuming most people here are painters, you get that rolling and stipple effect on the wall, or if there's a nail pop on the wall, all those little stipples, they just show straight through onto the wallpaper surface. So it kind of depends how they're speccing it out for you to install it. So you kind of have to know that, with their spec sheets ahead of time. So inspecting the wall, we always pole sand everything just like you would anyway. And then 2 wallpaper primers we use are guards. And I love guards from the standpoint, from a painter's perspective and from a wallpaper's perspective. It's great because if you have any wall board that's an issue, it penetrates through the paint and it'll penetrate through that wall board. So you have a really tight and sometimes too hard of a surface, but it's solid. So you don't have to worry about, people will say, I hate wallpaper because my mom could never get it off. Well, your mom can never get it off. And if there's a union painter on here, I'm sorry, but that's because the union painter that built the house during the 80s and 90s was in a hurry and did a crap job, and they didn't prime the walls, and they put wallpaper right over bare drywall. So it'll never come off. You added another layer of wallpaper to your wall. It's never coming off. So having that primer, and then you want to look on the wall, because if you ever used guards before, it's great because you can look down the side of that wall and you can see, if it's shiny or if it's dull. If it's dull, you need more primer on it because it's sucked into that wall too much. So having, proper surface, making sure there's no peeling paint, no nail pops, simple stuff of, are they going to fix any holes? So are the nails going back to where they were, or do they have to be filled? The curtains are a big one, where those anchors, they have to be fixed before they're going in or not. We're getting into it today because we're doing a commercial space, and the guys are there installing, and we're supposed to install a wall, and they're texting me, and I'm in a estimate and a walkthrough, and I can't take the call. So they're on hold, but they're texting me like crazy. I'm like, okay, there's something really wrong. So I finally step out for a few minutes and call them, like, dude, they want us to hang wallpaper over wallpaper. I'm like, all right, you got the project manager's number, call them right now. So they had commercial paper that they were taking Durabond, and they're skim coating around the edges, and then they're using Aqualock. They're taking tinted Aqualock and paint priming over the wallpaper to say, yeah, it's a good surface to use. So on so many levels, it's wrong, because if there's a commercial wallpaper on the wall, it's a national fire. They have national fire codes. It's a national fire code that you're not allowed to hang commercial wallpaper over existing wallpaper because of the toxic and fumes, and if it catches fire, it's a big issue. But outside of the fire code, you're trusting your surface. So when you're doing your surface prep, you don't know what's underneath that wallpaper. You don't know how well it's been prepped. So you go to hang wallpaper over existing wallpaper that's been there, say, 10 years. Wallpaper is designed to be pulled off of a wall, and now you're introducing moisture to a wallpaper that may or may not have been primed properly. That moisture has to go someplace. So is it going to go in the wallpaper to the wall, or is it going to come out through the wallpaper you're installing as it's drying? So, as the wallpaper adhesive is drying, it creates gas, and all those bubbles, all that air has to go somewhere. So it's going to, one way or another, it's going someplace. You want it to go into the wall if it's all possible, and that really, eliminates all your bubbles. But in this case, all it's going to do is come right back. So the whole wall, it just looks like, it looks like chicken pox all over the wall, because that gas has nowhere to go. And then for this case, commercial paper, you're putting one piece on and you put another piece over it, and then you cut your seams, and then it lays back down. Well, when you cut those seams, you have a couple different tools that you can use to avoid cutting the drywall, but at some level, the drywall gets scored. Now you've reintroduced adhesive air, water into the wall behind the other wallpaper. And as you sit there, you cut that, and within about a week, it starts curling like that. And it starts curling right off the wall. And you can't warranty that. And people want to say, well, it shouldn't be a big deal. Well, it is a big deal. And then the other part is you're putting Durabond over a slick surface. And I've never had experience with Durabond bonding to a slick surface. You know, you have to have something for it to bond to. So there's just so many reasons that you just, you know, produced a failure. It's not even funny, but they put it in writing today. We don't care. Hang it. All right. You put it in writing. We'll hang it.
Wow. But generally you're using guards, or you said there was a second one.
Guards are Roman. They changed a Roman 977. So it's a white pigmented primer, and it's specifically designed for wallpaper. The cool thing about the guards, I know you technically you can tint it, but you really can't. But the Roman 977, it's a white pigmented primer, and that can be tinted. There's another one, we just don't have access to it here in Chicago. It's called Draw Tight. So I know that's the of wallpaper primer, but we just can't get it.
So do you usually prime the wall a certain color based off of what the wallpaper is going to be?
We'll actually pre-paint it sometimes. So we'll prep the wall for everything. And if it's a really dark paper, again, you kind of have to look at the paper to what it says, because some of the wallpapers are semi-translucent. So whatever the paper is, we kind of leave it to the designer. Sometimes they want the white to be the focal point. Sometimes they want the black to be the focal point. So we kind of leave it to them what part of that paper they want to show through the most. So kind of like the underlying primers for, you know, the fine finishes. You know, if you're trying to paint red, you know, you can't paint red over yellow. So a similar kind of thing where you want to make sure you have a solid color. So depending on your seams, so a lot of them, the seams butt paper to paper. So as you're doing that, by putting a solid color underneath there, if the seams kind of pull apart a little bit, you know, you're talking the width of a piece of paper sometimes. But if you have a solid surface color underneath that, you're not going to see the white or yellow that the wall was done. It'll have that solid uniform color. And then you prime it with guards, and then you're good to go.
That's awesome. So you mentioned something about overlaying paper and then cutting it after. Is that what double cutting is? What is double?
That's a double cut. So just kind of like two pieces of paper. So you're putting the one piece of paper goes down and then the other goes right over it. So typically every paper is a little bit different. On the double cut, usually for commercial, you got like a 2-inch overlay. So they physically overlap 2 inches. And then that 1 inch mark on each side, you're cutting with a straight edge. And so the top end comes off, the bottom end comes off, and then they lay back down perfect. And they have a perfect seam. So it's not a factory seam, it's made for that wall, which is really nice in a lot of ways, because if you have pages or pieces of paper where you're trying to take two pieces of paper and you're trying to put them together, well, it's great as long as it's flat. But, you know, if the wall has a little bit of a bubble to it, you get that. So you get that little seam on there, and then you're trying to work, you know, push the paper. Well, you get this one down. Well, now over here, now this one's off, just like that little, you know, where the paper's folded wrong. Same exact theory. Now this one's not right. So now you're trying to get this one to get in here, and how you got to move this one to make it seam. So the double cutting, I really like it. Once you learn how to do it, it's fast, but I like it because you get that wall, you get the paper to lay on the wall and seam for the wall, not for the paper. So you get a really nice, even, flush cut. So it works. It just really works really well. And then with like most of them are 2 inches, but there's some that are actually like tiny. So we've had some of the less expensive paper because some of them are printed per square inch. So when they're printing per square inch, you know, you're not getting 2 or 3 inches overlay. You're getting just whatever they need. So sometimes it gets really tricky trying to do that double cut because you've got a 1/2 inch overlay that you have to make sure you're cutting and that you're not cutting over one way or another so the wall doesn't show through.
Crazy. The thought of it scares me. Like, about to cut this paper.
Yeah, so, you know, I got two of the guys like, he cracks me up. One of the new guys, like, I'll hang it. I'm not cutting it. I'm not cutting it. I'm not cutting nothing.
Yeah.
But I mean, he puts paper up faster than I do. So you want to go hang it all? I'll come behind you and cut it all day long. And so, knowing your strengths, what you're good at, what's fast, that's wallpaper. We always put 2 people on wallpaper no matter what. So even if it's a powder room, there's 2 people there. Part of it is engineering. Part of it's just carrying tools in and out. But little stuff like that, what you may think, what you may not think, it just makes it easier for having those 2-man teams.
So I've seen. Let's talk about the glue now. Adhesive.
Sure.
So we got our wall is prepped. We have guards down, or we have the Roman down. It's tinted the right color. And then there's like all sorts of adhesives and different ways to apply adhesives, and like, fill me in here. Help me out.
Yep. So that's where you have to, again, look at the paper, read the instructions, what it says. If there's no instructions, call whoever did it to get what your instructions are. I know as guys, we hate instructions, but wallpaper is the one thing I read the instructions on. And it makes a big difference. And we didn't do it wrong. We just found out the hard way because we were doing for a condo association, and it just said use wallpaper adhesive. That was the instructions. So as we put the adhesive on the wall, and we did a test wall for them, it was kind of interesting because we used Dynamite 234 clear adhesive, and I love that adhesive. That's my go-to one for everything. And I know I don't have the right word for it. I want to say elastomeric, but I know that's not the right word.
Are you comments right now? Because the last comment is Dynamite 234 is my go-to glue.
Yeah, man. I love that stuff because you
said that word for word.
You get it in a container, and it looks like it almost looks like yogurt or sour. It looks like sour cream. That's the perfect analogy. It looks like a tub of sour cream. It's solid, but as you especially our paint store, they know when we order 5-gallon buckets, we always have it mixed. And as you can do it with a paint stir, so if we can get some ordered for the wallpaper class, we'll make sure we have that to show that, because it's a great video because it's so thick. But you can thin it to how you want to use it without adding water. So the benefit of that is other wallpaper adhesives, when you add water to it, you are adding micro bacteria from your water source. So you just add you're kind of risking the effect of mold being able to be growing behind your wallpaper, between the wall. So the Dynamite is great because you're putting it on pure, so it comes that thick. So if you need a really thick application, you can roll it on a wall, or you can roll it on top of the paper itself, and it goes on thick. We use it in our paste machines because we have paste machines for the really big, wide stuff, but we have some smaller ones too. So we can take it to the store and shake it, and now it's ready to go into the wall in the paste machine. I don't have to add any water to it. So that's why I like it. Other people don't, but that's okay. And the other reason we use it is Rollman makes an unbelievable product too for clear adhesives, and they have a couple different grades of it. But personally, and there's about 4 of us now, it's actually all 4 of us in our company, we can't use the Roman stuff because they have mildicides built into the paste, and the mildicides actually make my hands break out. So after a full day, I mean, the ends of my fingers will be that red. So whatever's in there, I don't know. So that's why we don't use it. So pretty much you got clear adhesive and then clay adhesive. So clay adhesive, a lot of most commercial paper are using clay. But there's other ones that are specific that they need clay. The one paper I started with, we did it with clear, and it had a lot of moisture to it. And so because all that moisture was in there, it came right through because it was a pure paper. And so it actually stained. Wasn't intended to, but just the water came through, and it was a fabric on the surface of the paper. So it actually darkened, but it never lightened up again. But that was the first time I've ever seen that. So we actually had to use a clay-based adhesive, which is thicker, and it looks yellow, and it doesn't have as much moisture to it. So sometimes it works well for, you have to put corners up, but there's not a lot of adhesive or moisture to it, so it works really well to get it on the wall. You don't have to wait as long to see if you're going to have bubbles. because there's not as much moisture, so you don't have as much gassing, so it works really great.
Interesting. Now you can apply that just with a roller or their paste machines. Is that the two ways that you apply it?
Yeah. So three ways technically, because some paste will say paste the wall. So you actually, however wide it is, if it's 21 inches wide, we got our 14-inch rollers, and I'm using a 14-inch roller, and I'll put it in a 14-inch Wooster pan, and I'll roll out, 2 swoops. You get it on there, and it just, as we're coming to the bottom of one pan or one strip, the other guy is pasting the next strip or pasting the next piece of wall. We're seeing a lot more of that, which I like it because it's fast, because there's not as much worry about getting paste on the front of the papers. So if you're using the traditional tape wallpaper table, you're putting all your wallpaper on top of your surface, and then you're rolling it out. So you have to be a little bit more careful depending on the type of paper you have to make sure the end of the roller, just like you have it with paint, it doesn't have too much glue and it doesn't get on the side. Because if you get it on the face of it, some adhesives will damage the appearance or the front surface of the wallpaper. So you have to be really careful with that. And then through the paste machine, I mean, if you can run it through a paste machine, oh my gosh, because literally it kind of has a series of S's, and you feed the paper through it, and then you just stick it to the wall. Boom. Yep.
So what's the disadvantage to using a paste machine then? Why do you use it? Why not use it every time?
Room. So they're big. So they're big and clunky and need a lot of room. So, and then cleaning it up. So we're lucky overall when we're done with it, we just kind of go from job to job to job to job. So we'll do about 3 jobs in a row with it, and then we drain out the machine, drain the paste from or adhesive from the machine, and then we take it to a car wash and we just blow it out with a pressure washer from a car wash.
So the whole thing is waterproof.
It's waterproof, yeah. So you can get really if you have to use it in a bucket in some places, you're trying to clean it out and you're in someone's house or out someone's backyard. They take a long time to clean out. And then they have counters that are on there, so you can keep track of how many inches that you're pulling. Those counters are stupid expensive, and they are not water resistant in the least. So any water in there will ruin that counter. So there's some things that just not really you're not really able to use it. And that's one of the reasons I get a lot of grief, because we use Honda minivans for our company vehicles. But they're cheap. They last forever. We've got 300,000, 200 plus on a couple of them. They just run. But the nice thing about it, it's a full 8-foot enclosed van that has complete heat in the back. And we just take the seats out, fold the back seats down, and put a sheet of plywood in there. And it's great because you can just leave it in the van, because it's pretty sizable, as far as how long it is. So some of them newer, I think it's the Sprinters, the Ford ones we were looking at, we can't fit a paste machine in there, and we couldn't fit our paste tables in there. So it'd have been nice to have a smaller one, but we just really couldn't use it. So it's depending on where you're at, and if you're in a closed area, like high rises, we can't fit those paste machines in the elevators. Some of them are too small. And then if you're locked out of the freight elevator, you're not getting that into the regular passenger elevator, so you're stuck with your paste tables. And someone just commented on their VOV, so that's another type of adhesive. It's stupid high tech. Usually you can get it off the wall, but it's meant, we use it on our corners. So if we're wrapping wallpaper on a 90-degree corner, so to get on that side corner, sometimes it's really hard. So we actually will pre-prime the wall with this VOV. It's called Extreme Tack, and put it on there so that way when you're putting the wallpaper, it's on there. Works really well.
Okay, so most of the time you're using a Roman adhesive, or no, the dynamite?
Yeah, 234 is pretty much what we use. But we have the Roman clay. It works really great. The only bad thing is you have to thin that in order to get it to go through a paste machine. You can't just use it out of the bucket. So you have to add something in there. So distilled water works pretty good, because again, you're not adding any type of you're not adding anything to contaminate the glue.
And then, so what's the outside corners you're wrapping with a sheet, you're not like having two pieces that abut. You wrap it completely.
And like you got outside corners, so the wallpaper has to come around there. So we do these pre-checks on our paper, so kind of like, you can't really see it, but it's not 100% straight, and you got to know that going in, because you're going to have issues with that paper. Somewhere that paper's got to lay flat. So an outside corner, we pre-glue them, and so that helps for the adhesion. But it also kind of gets us more ability. We can lay one side flat and really make it sure it's flat, and then we can just go from top to bottom, or maybe from the middle to the top, and you can work that paper around that corner. It takes a while sometimes, but that's the best way we found to make it work. Someone was just mentioning using torches, so you can actually, for some of the vinyls, it's vinyl like you used to sit on in your cars, the older cars. That's kind of what it looks like, and so it has a lot of memory to it. So when you're getting it from the factory, depending on how it is, that stuff, it has a memory. It's been coiled up. It doesn't want to lay, it's been whirled this way. It doesn't want to go this way. So using that torch is a nice, easy way. Once you're getting it around there, you're kind of forcing it to relearn or give it a new memory. So you're wrapping around there, getting it hot. And if you get a cold rag on there after you get it, man, it locks hardcore. Works pretty good. But we don't get it out much. It's kind of an exception more than a rule for the torch.
And then inside, where inside corners just sort of the opposite?
Yep, inside corners, where two corners meet on the inside of a wall, so four corners on the wall. Outside corners is, outside of a hallway, usually. So just kind of where the two walls come to meet inside the corner of a house or a room.
And are those done the same way, where you continually have one paper wrap them, or do you meet two pieces of paper?
It kind of depends on the paper and because you got to have a start point. So you're starting someplace and you're ending someplace. So you're going to have one corner that's going to usually try and pick the least visible corner of the house or the room. That's where you're starting. That's where you're ending. So that way, that's where the pattern's not going to line up someplace, and that's usually where it's not going to line up. But it really depends on the house. So, kind of that pre-engineering when you're walking it through, kind of having a laser level with you, or having just a little, even if you have a 2-foot level, you can put it in a corner and you can see even on the inside corners where it's got that bow where, it just wasn't done very well, and you're going to have issues. That's where you have issues with the paper not lining up. So sometimes you might have those inside corners where the top looks great, and you get to the middle and the pattern kind of comes out, and the bottom it comes back in again. So just kind of knowing that the more you know ahead of time to prepare the customer, you might have seams that don't match because of this. You may have it because of this. So kind of preempting them to know that. Wrapping the outside corners too, you have to have enough paper. So you can't just, like you were talking about, ending it on the end. You actually have to wrap that paper like 4 inches to make sure it wraps around and there's enough adhesive for that to hold that paper down. If it gets a little bit over to the corner, it'll pop right up because it just doesn't have enough adhesive power to pop them in there.
So you're using what's the most vulnerable spot? Is it outside corners are the toughest to have not fail? Like what fails in a wallpaper?
The outside corners, usually it gets beat up. So usually more they're getting, people walk in a room, what gets hit, their coat, their jacket, their purse, whatever they're carrying, outside corners. Those get beat up pretty good. For bathrooms, kitchens, it's around anywhere where there's water and sinks. The water can get behind there. Usually the issues I think probably the number one issue we have is where we end if there's wainscoting. That's probably number one area we have. So where the top, whatever wainscoting is. So where that paper comes down and it hits that wherever that's at, depending on who finishes it. So sometimes the contractor hasn't finished putting in like a top rail or what have you. But if it's all said and done, it's been caulked. So, where that wood meets, it's not a 90-degree angle. It's got that caulk line. So now it gets really tricky. You're trying to keep a nice straight line, but you're cutting the caulk. And now it's, okay, are you going to re-caulk it to kind of hide, to get that flat edge again? That's usually where we have the issues, is kind of the wainscoting, for us at least. I know some guys have got some good tricks on it, putting extra paste down or different types of adhesive on the bottom. But usually that's where we have the biggest issues cleaning people, because they're using rags and chemicals, which don't really work well with ink. And so they're using the rags on the bottom edges to clean it. Next thing you know, you got a line where, it's just wearing off, or they're using too much Windex or whatever they're using, Pledge, and it'll get into those seams, or it'll get underneath there and start, allow that paper to curl up from the bottom.
Is there something that you do before you install where is there testing that has to happen?
Depending on the paper we do, like commercial paper, it's pretty much going to go. I mean, there's not a lot of we'll just start. Yes, you should test every piece. We'll because that's the safest way to go. I mean, we know ahead of time because we get paper ahead of time. So I always want it in our shop. So if they're delivering to the job site, I'm still going to go get it and I'm going to bring it back to the shop because I want to know what it's going to do. So we always test it out to see, one, the kind of adhesive it's going to use, if one's going to work better than the other. But for the traditional residential papers, we always cut off like an inch strip on the bottom, and we just cut it out, see how it looks like when it's cut, and then we test it with water. So we'll get it wet to see what it's going to do, and we always put a tape measure next to it because some of that paper will expand a ½ inch. So if 20-inch pieces, and you're sitting there watching, it's just going, it keeps getting bigger. It's like, holy crap, it gets pretty big. So you want to know how much that's going to expand, because that really does affect, like with your booking time. And I just learned this a couple months ago from an installer here, Sean Lawler, here in Chicago. He was showing me that, if you're not booking it all the same time, and even if you do, that expansion happens, but it keeps expanding to a certain point. So if the booking time, say, is 5 minutes, you booked it for 5 minutes, but you put more, there's been paste longer at the top than at the bottom. So as you work your way around that room, in theory, the top of the paper, you get like a trapezoid effect, because the top of the paper maybe is wider or thinner than the bottom. So in theory, every time you paste it, you have to switch which way you're pasting to make sure the paper stays true. And I never thought about that.
And can you tell me what booking is?
Yep. Booking is basically taking the paper. So after you get the paste on there, so you have your paper on top of your table and you rolled out the paste on there, and basically you're folding it on top of itself. And that allows the paste to get on all the surfaces and to actually penetrate into the paper and allow it to really, it bonds or binds into the paper. So once you're putting it on the wall, you got the adhesive that's sucked into the wallpaper. So you get a nice adhesion.
Interesting. So you do that every time. You put the paste on and then hold it and let it.
That's why, again, instructions. So the stuff that you're pasting the wall, you're putting paste on the wall and you're hanging it right away. You're not booking anything. So it's just fast. There's some stuff you have to book for 20 minutes. And so it gets really tricky because you're putting paste on there and you have to we get those really big 55-gallon drum liners, because on some of the pieces of wallpaper that are 54 inches wide, you don't have anything to stick them in. And if you have to book it for 20 minutes, you put that paste on there and now you got to stick it in a garbage bag, because otherwise where the paste is on the edges, it'll start drying out. So if you put it in a garbage bag, you get a twist tie and shut it. Now there's no air getting in there, and then put it to the wall.
Wow. Is that a standard practice? Do you have to do that very often?
Not often. It's been a while since I've had to do that with it. The more expensive the paper, the more you get into that kind of stuff.
Interesting. So then we go to installation. So we got adhesive on it. Then we just walk up, stick it up, and walk away.
Yeah, sometimes actually, yeah. Yeah, but kind of hard to explain on a little thing with this, but you're pretty much, that's where your engineering starts. Where you're going to start in the room, where you're going to end in the room. Being mindful of what you have. If you around here with the cable, most people won't allow you to disconnect the cable, because if you disconnect the cable, then the cable company has to come back out and reset the modems and charge you $50, of course. So there's a lot of places where we can't, there's, some obstacles in the way. So you want to make sure you have that. But it's pretty much you're laying out your pieces. So the guys, we've trained them, we're pre-cutting everything to make sure we have enough. make sure the patterns are going to line up, and then we just put them in order. We have them in under our wallpaper table, or we'll put them in a separate room, and we line them up and we number them. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, however many pieces there are, and they're labeled which one's the top, which one's the bottom. So that way there's no confusion on that. And you always have like about 1.5 inches on the top, 1.5 inches on the bottom for extra, just to account for your wall, because no wall is exactly straight. You get those weaves up and down. But you start your first line, and if it's a say 21-inch piece of paper, I'm going to put a laser on the wall at 20. I'm going to cut like a 1/2 inch off, because I know that inside corner isn't going to be pure. So I use a laser level because that's just stupid and fast. So you put it on there, get your laser level. We use those planks for the most part to stand on, and start from the top and just work your way from the top to the bottom. And depending on the type of paper is the type of tool you use. So there's different tools as far as how you're applying it to the wall. And then once the first one's ready to go, trim the top, you're trimming the bottom, and you're looking at it from the side down the wall to make sure there's no bubbles, no gaps. And then next person, usually you have your second person that's pasting everything for you. So that way, once you start, it's just you're handing pieces and handing them and sticking them around until you get around the room. And then once you have someone you're working with, they kind of get a feel for your timing also. So, if you got a window, you're going to be on that window for 20 minutes, or the worst, if you have those stupid pedestal sinks with all little valves underneath and you got a paper all around it, you're there for a half hour, and it's not going to be any sooner.
Interesting. So what kind of tools are you using? Are there specific tools? I know there's specific tools. I don't know what they are, but there are tools you're using to do all this. What are they?
Go to the shop today. The only one I have here, I have these ones called Unis tools. So she's out of Canada. She came up with these Uni tools, I think they're called. So they're metal straight edges. So they're kind of nice because, one, they're stainless steel, so they don't mar up a lot of the surfaces. So she has these set up so they have a little bit of that bevel to it. So it's kind of nice because when you're using the cut, you can set it against the wall and make a nice line to it. Because it's stained, you can just drag it across to make your cuts. And it's cool because on the other end, she has a little bit of a bevel cut to it, or a bevel bend. So that way on the top, we put these on the tops of the wallpaper for the most part. So to the ceiling, so that way you have a little bit extra of a wallpaper lip. So if there's, when the ceiling moves up and down, you have a little bit extra to kind of play with. So we use these for pretty much every single paper that we hang. They just work really great. So it's just a straight edge, just a different type of straight edge. And then we have, there's some plastic ones that are like this. So there's the smoothers. I mean, you can use drywall knives. There's there's a couple of people that you have cake frosting, whatever those things are called. I guess it's called a knife. And they use those cake frosting knives for like crown molding, like up in the corner there. And they take that cake frosting knife and stick it in there because it has all those angles with the knife, and that's how they'll cut around all the different moldings around bookcases or whatever they're cutting around. So that works pretty nice. Sometimes you got to look tricky with the tools, but the straight edges are a big one. The laser level, a regular level. We use sweeps. So a sweep is basically just kind of how it sounds. It looks like a broom. It's about, some of them are 8 inches, some of them are 12, and I think I have one that's 16. And we used to, if you do a lot of faux finishing, we used to do those striés on the wall. That's kind of what a wallpaper brush looks like. But ours are the ones we use, and the ones we have at the class. They have, I think ours are, I think they're boar hair brushes. I don't remember. There's all kinds of different ones you can get. Horsehair, ox hair. There's all kinds of them. But most of the wallpaper tools that we use are all from Japan, because none of the U.S. manufacturers are making wallpaper tools anymore. So the sweep is a big one. That's probably the go-to for laying everything down on the wall, because it doesn't mess up the paper. It won't crease the paper, but it allows you just nice, soft edge that, as you're putting it on there, you can sweep your way down. And then they have smoothers. Smoothers, there are thousands of them. So there's really hard ones. There's soft ones. They have ones that have leather edges on them. So it really depends on the type of paper you're using. Sometimes I have one of these cleaning cloths for my computer, but these work great if you have really delicate paper, because you can put the smoother inside that. And then if you have a mural, because the murals can be really delicate, you're actually using this to smooth down the wall to get the bubbles out, and it's not scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And then the razor blades. So traditional razor blades you buy at the hardware store, paint store, those 100 packs. And then we use like the Olfa blades. I use those more than anything. Those are the big hand tools. Those are the big ones. And then we have a couple more that we'll be giving away out there.
Yeah. So anyone that does come to class, we'll leave with all of the specialty tools. You don't want to buy, from what I understand, you don't want to go to Sherwin-Williams and buy your wallpaper tools.
Yeah, by us, they just don't have them. They're starting to bring them back. It's been a case here. We just haven't been able to get them. So they have a couple smoothers and like seam rollers. They have some, but they don't have a ton.
Yeah. It's interesting. Let's see. Anything else to cover as far as
again? Nothing that comes to mind off the top of my head. I can't really think of anything else right now.
Well, anything more than this. I mean, that's why this is going to be a 2-day full hands-on thing, because I'm listening. What are zinc strips? Do you use zinc strips?
I do not. I've never used them, so I'm my understanding of a zinc strip. It's a metal, but it's really a thinner piece of metal, so you lay them down on top of your wallpaper table, and you can trim with those. We just cut right into our wallpaper tables, so I've never used them. I never learned how. Not that it's a bad thing to use. I just don't, and I've seen them. I've just never used them.
I'm glad that you're teaching this class, because after hearing all of this, I have a headache. The thought of wallpaper seems more daunting, and I'm really excited to spend 2 days and watch you teach this class, so I can figure out and wrap my head around it. Because the idea of just going out, we've been asked so many times to do wallpaper. I can't even. It's crazy, and more. And
that they have for sure. And Peter, a couple comments on here, and it kind of gets in once you get into it. But the razor blades, it's the cheapest tool for the wallpaper that you have. They're stupid cheap. But the one thing I will tell you, and you can use whatever you want, but if you're using razor blades, have a damn cup with you or a water bottle, and put them razor blades in your stupid cup. Because I can't even tell you how many times we've been on job sites, and these guys, they're cutting and they're flipping. They're cutting and they're flipping. Next thing you got razor blades all over the stupid floor. So to me, it's a safety thing, but I just don't understand it. But it's the cheapest tool you have, but it's the most important tool you have aside from straight lines. Because if you have a bad razor blade, you are not going to have a good day. And it's gone. One cut, and you can flip it over. But, every time there's a cut, with the traditional razor blades, they're getting put in there, or you flip it to the other side. And I know, like with the Alpha blades, I like them because they have this tool called the Blade Eater, which we got for everybody. And these things are pretty cool because you put the blade in there and they snap. So you make a cut, and it almost looks like a gun holster. Stick it in there, snap. Stick it in there, snap. They work great.
Wow. So I did not know that. And it's a new blade for every cut.
Every single cut. Yep.
Wow. Because what happens if you don't?
Depending on the paper, the Olfa ones, there's another one from Japan that we've used that I like them better, but they don't snap off very well, so we just stopped using them. So now Olfa has a new one now that's been pretty good. So if you don't have it's kind of like a regular knife. You try and cut paper, and you got a dull blade, it's not happening. And depending on the paper, the wetter it is, the harder it is to cut. So, having a really good straight edge, you're jamming this thing and you're holding it tight and you're cutting it to make sure that that paper is being held in place by the edge. So when that razor hits it, it's cutting the paper, because if you're not holding it tight, that razor blade can pull that paper up, or worse, it'll start tearing the paper underneath there. So you really got to make sure the right tools, it make all the difference.
So the wallpaper industry is keeping the razor blade industry in business, it sounds like.
Oh my gosh.
That
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, my favorite ones, I know everyone's now blowing up on Olfa. I know my favorite ones are Tajima, but Tajima blades, they're only selling so many in the United States now. So if they don't have a big enough order, they stop shipping them. So we went back to Olfa because they're just more available. Home Depot stopped selling them, which really makes me mad. So now just our local paint store sells them, but they're not. We have to bulk order them. So every time we get them, we order a couple cases of them because they're just not available like they used to be.
It's crazy. So there is a lot to wallpaper.
A little bit.
Grab and do. I can't believe you started your career in wallpaper by just grabbing and doing.
The thing I like about it is you're always learning. And I don't know. I love learning new stuff. I've got probably about 8 books on my desk that I'm reading at any given time, plus podcasts and, your audio books while you're driving. So, between marketing, doing our craft better, there's always something to learn. But it's not just about the learning. It's about the fact that the materials being used are constantly evolving. We did a podcast. No, we never did the podcast because they wouldn't let me record them. So I won't say who it is. So we called them about their wallpaper, which I thought they'd be excited for, but they would not go on record. But their biggest thing is especially overseas, China being the number one issue. There's no regulation for what they can use. So United States, they're pretty standard in the inks that they're using, the papers that they're using, but they always change. They always improve. So it's always an evolving industry as far as what it's being printed on, what they're using to print. So from that aspect, I love it because you will never stop learning how to install wallpaper. We did one today. It was embroidered wallpaper. So I don't know how they did it, but it was embroidered. It looked like the cross stitch stuff that my grandma used to do, but it's wallpaper.
Crazy. And there's like infinite amount of projects you could do and designs. And do you ever like have to faux paint in like a piece of the pattern to make 2 pieces that aren't lining up blend together?
I'll tell you. I used to do custom murals. So that's how I started in painting, was hand painting murals. So airbrush, that's all I did. Everything was airbrushed. So airbrushing, we did some big ones, big size whales and underwater scenes, and everything was airbrushed. So once Fatheads started, thank you Fatheads, that pretty much started the demise of custom murals, at least for me. But I still kept the tools. So now we still have all the paints that we use. So there's been a lot of times, especially with the murals, where they're printed a special way and they've got a defect, and it's always eye level right in the middle of the freaking wall. If there's a defect, I'll guarantee you that's where it's going to happen. So it's been nice. I carry a CO2 tank. It's actually a scuba tank, but I use it for my airbrush. So we'll just go in there and just kind of play with it, and kind of blend it out. So that helps a lot. But sometimes they can't be fixed, and you have to reorder everything. But those digital murals and graphics, oh my gosh, like you said, it's just endless application what they can do with those things, and they're so fun to do. Make such a huge impact on the room.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love them.
And once a designer knows that you can do this, the work just keeps coming. Then I would imagine. Overall,
yeah. I mean, the commercial stuff, like hotels, I don't even bid hotels because they use for the most part, they use roaming crews. So these people are from all over the country, and they just go from hotel to hotel to hotel to hotel. And they're doing it very fast, and they do it very cheap. I can't compete with that, and I don't want to. That's not my market. We gear kind of like fine paints of Europe. We gear for the higher end client. That's what I want to work with, because it doesn't matter if stock prices go down. They're still going to paint their house. If someone wants a mural in their house, they're not going to be affected if gasoline's gone up by 50 cents. they don't care. They're still going to have it done. So that's been my goal for my business, to aim for the higher end market, because it's more recession proof. And then it's been an accident, but it was a happy accident. So by doing the painting, the wallpaper, and the cabinets, one way or another, someone's doing something. And it's been a nice build our business, because even with, trying to build and trying to gain your business, you call a realtor, or you call whomever saying you're a painter, you might get a time of day if you've called at the right time when something has happened, but you call them and say, hey, I'm a wallpaper installer, just want to offer services. Can we get your information? Every single time. They may not use you, but I'll tell you, they're never gonna say no to you.
Yeah. That's why I'm excited about wallpaper. It's a differentiator. And if people love the ease of hiring one company to do multiple things. So if I can do cabinets and your wall painting and your wallpaper install, and you don't have to call anybody else, the margins will be better.
Show me the money.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? Is building businesses and trying to make some money. So if I can add value to a client, by installing wallpaper, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast. Tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, the Paint and Paper Podcast. So we started it a couple years ago, and then we just got busy, scaling our business, because we actually had all our children worked for me at some point doing something. So it was nice. I had so much fun doing it. They didn't have to go flip burgers anywhere, so it was great. And we just kind of kept small. We had like 2 or 3 people at a given time. And then once we started scaling, then we had to hire people. And then the hiring has been a little bit more work than I anticipated. So within the last year, it kind of got put to the side, but we've been picking it up here. That was my commitment for the year, of just talking about it. So I gear it mainly for Chicago area, but it's just education. So educating homeowners on anything to do with paint, wallpaper, cabinets. So kind of an extension of our YouTube channel, where we talk about whatever we're doing for the day. Just the podcast, we do it once a month, and it could be talking to a designer about what trends are coming in. We just got done talking to Sherwin-Williams last week about some of their new products that they were talking about, that sanitizing paint. So it's kind of cool to talk about, and it's good from our aspect. I like it for marketing, because when people go to our website, you got your website, or where we're at, what we're doing. You got your blog, you got your YouTube channel, you got a podcast. That whole thing is social proof. It just really helps. I think it helps. It's a lot easier. I don't have to sell anything, because they know who we are before I ever get in the house.
Yep.
So that aspect, but I just like being able to talk about stuff, relating to people, kind of seeing how we can help other people with their businesses, talk about what they specialize in, and if it's a way we can improve someone else's bottom line by getting leads, that's great. Zig Ziglar, help other people get what they want, naturally you just get what you want. So that's kind of our philosophy behind it.
I love it. And so it's called the Paint and Paper Podcast.
It is. Yep.
On all the podcast platforms. Yep.
Go to iTunes. It's there. You can go to our website, DeFrancoWallpaper.com. You'll find a link for it on there too. So it's been fun. We've interviewed, it was kind of cool. We actually had a run of interviewing a bunch of movie people. So that was pretty fun. They were all faith-based movies, but they were talking about how they did it and different aspects. That was really fun. I know Chris Shank. I think we've interviewed him, I think, once or twice about the PCA. I think we've had Nick May on there. I don't remember who else, but then trying to get local people. Just we want to talk about just kind of community spotlights. So we've been using it as a way to do some community outreach, talk about some fundraising opportunities, Paint It Forward opportunities. Then last one we did was for a non-for-profit. My wife, her daughter, and then a bunch of other women that they know started. So it's called Camp Cedar, and so it's a weekend camp that they're using to help sexually abused young girls. So that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool talking to them about that, raising awareness and trying to get more information to people about that. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing a lot of marketing. And
I love marketing.
Of the downturn and the pain that you felt from the downturn? It's like, at least that's what you started with. During the downturn, you started with the the blog and you found success. Was that the first real marketing thing you did?
That was the first marketing I got into. Yep, was the blogging. Yeah.
And then marketing.
What's that?
Once marketing works, it's one of those things where you're like, now I want to do more.
It's addictive, but I love it. And I like Donald Miller. I love listening to Donald Miller stuff, Story Brand, how he kind of breaks that down. But yeah, sales line, I still probably use that more, the Sheridan. I probably use that more than anything else. I was away for the weekend, and we got the opportunity to do a really close knit. There was 10 of us in a room with, I never heard before, Chris Tuft. You ever heard of him?
No.
Yeah. So he does a lot of social stuff, and he is like an amazing networking person. He's supposed to be like considered the network king as far as connections. He can make connections at any second with anyone you want almost. That's his thing. That's it. But he's a really high-end marketing guy. So he was talking about how he goes about his marketing and just making connections. So it's kind of cool listening to something from a little bit younger and how he's doing different things with that. He talked so fast, I couldn't keep up with him. It was too fast. Just still fun to listen to.
That's awesome. Well, I think we've covered the broad strokes. Anyone who wants more obviously has to come to ZKFS and get their hands dirty and hang some wallpaper. We have rooms set up. We're going to be hanging wallpaper and doing all those things. But I have 3 questions that I ask everybody at the end of every show.
Okay, I've never listened to any of them, so I don't know what they are.
That's good. This is organic. See, we want to keep things organic and very real here.
Okay.
That's the key word these days, authentic.
Right.
So I need a DIY tip. If someone thinks that they wants to go hang their own wallpaper, what's like the one thing you would tell someone, a homeowner or a DIYer who's like, I'm going to hang my own wallpaper. Nothing you can tell me. I'm going to do it. What's the one tip you would tell them?
Make sure you read the instructions and then go to YouTube and see if there's someone that's showing a video on how to do it.
Love it. I need a favorite piece of wallpaper hanging paraphernalia.
My favorite is the blades, those Tajima blades, man. I've used they just fit my hand right. They're metal, so they don't break because nothing pisses me off more than cheap plastic tools, and so it's metal. So I've had one I think I've had it for a year and a half now. Same blade.
Wonderful. Now this is the best question. I need the most embarrassing horror story. I hung the wallpaper upside down and it cost me $50,000. I don't know. Give me the most deepest, darkest horror story you got. We want to hear it.
Yeah. Making the mistake the other day on the estimate, that was a big one. I haven't done that before.
Is there anything that haunts you?
Nothing that we did wrong, but it was an issue that we got into where here's one. So I put up wallpaper and everything went great. Homeowner came home, loved it, and it was down a stairwell, up the other side of the stairwell, kitchen, living room, dining room, all the same paper. So it had to have been 20 rolls of wallpaper, if not more. It was a lot. I was there for 3 days hanging this. Homeowner loved it. They were signing off on it. The interior designer comes in and in his flamboyant self, what the pop did you do? And we're like, what? He's like, it's effing upside down. We're like, what are you talking about? It's upside down. And he's across the room and he's looking at a little tiny pattern that's as big as that earbud that is in this huge, Damzik thing, this one little thing, and because just like that, it was supposed to go that direction, and it was facing that direction. It all had to be. I had to strip the whole thing and rehang it all.
Now, do you have to buy new wallpaper too?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
And wash the walls and reprime the walls. Yeah, I was not happy camper.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yep. It never always been thought because 9 times out of 10 you take the paper off the roll, and that's usually how it's supposed to go. We're looking on the website. There was no indication. There's no indication on the paper which way it goes. Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was not a good day.
And did you have a relationship with this designer ahead of time?
Yeah, that was probably our 5th project, and that was our last project.
And the client was happy with it, and he didn't care.
No. He couldn't look at it because he knew it was wrong.
Wow. And did you stop working with him, or did he stop working with you?
He stopped working with us.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. His thing was you should have said something, and we sent pictures to somebody, and apparently it wasn't the right person to send it to, because there's another free one. You hang 3 pieces of wallpaper, you take a picture, and you have someone look at it. So it's on the instructions. After 3 pieces, you make sure it's done right. And so after 3 pieces, they don't pay for anything. If there's a problem in the first or 2 pieces, they'll reimburse you sometimes, but you have a better leg to stand on. But yeah, we did 3 pieces, took a picture, sent it in. Well, they don't have the authority. I do, and you should.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was not.
That doesn't sound like a designer I'd want to work with, though.
It was great up until that day.
Yeah. Wow. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to have you out to Rhode Island. We are going to nerd out. We're going to teach people how to hang wallpaper, and hopefully they will learn from that mistake, and no one will have to strip all the wallpaper and rehang it.
Yeah, we got Daniel coming. He's he's been hanging the longest for me, so he's going to be out there. So what I'm not showing, he's going to be showing. So it's kind of nice because he's still learning too, but he's got really great hands-on, great personal experience. So he's going to be a really good asset for helping also.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be awesome. Well,
all right, man.
And I'll be in touch.
All right, sounds great.
All right.
See you guys soon.
I think there's a way. There used to be a way to exit David out, but I don't think it's here anymore.
I don't know how to get out of here because this is the first time I used
There's
Instagram.
exit top. It used to be I could kick you out, but now it doesn't look like I can.
I can refresh.
Instagram has. Oh, here we go. Get out of here. I'm removing this guy. All right. Who's excited to hang wallpaper now? I'm terrified. I am absolutely terrified to hang wallpaper. That's why I'm going to be attending the class that we were putting on, that David and his lead guy will be teaching. I will not be teaching this. I'm going to be an observer, and we're going to be working to figure out, make sure we've been working back and forth a lot, making sure that the education goes well, that we're actually teaching people that in a way they can go home. That's the big thing at ZKFS is like, I hope you can go home and actually do this and not just be overwhelmed and not know where to start. So everybody, thanks for watching. If you're not into wallpaper, this was an incredibly boring episode. And if you made it this long and you're not into wallpaper, I'm sorry, but I would imagine if you're not listening this far. So everyone who is into wallpaper, thanks for watching. And I will see you guys Sunday night for the Q&A. If you're not following on Patreon, there's a link in the bio, blah, blah, blah. You guys can go there, do that. I do a live private Q&A on Sunday nights. If you're not aware, now you are. Have a good one, everybody.